The Killing Joke, the darkest Batman story ever. All it takes is one bad day to reduce the sanest man alive to lunacy. That's what the Joker believes anyway. And to convince Batman that they are not so different, the Joker sets out to prove just that by torturing Batman's closest ally, Commissioner James Gordon. As a creature of the night, there have been plenty of dark Batman stories, but this tale of madness and cruelty may be the darkest of all time. While The Killing Joke is considered by some to be the definitive origin of the Joker, the villain himself would rather leave his past as multiple choice, with this just one story he tells. But we'll let you decide for yourself whether this is the truth or one possibility from a broken mind. Arkham Encounter. It was a dark and stormy night, and the Batman came to Arkham Asylum to have a heart-to-heart with the Joker. Or as close to it as you can get with the heartless clown prince of crime. As he approached the Joker, the villain sat in silence, playing cards on his own. "I've been thinking lately about you and me," Batman began. "About what's going to happen to us in the end. We're going to kill each other, aren't we?" But the Joker ignored Batman, continuing to flip cards. Batman grabbed the Joker's hand to get his attention. He wanted Joker to know that he'd make a genuine attempt to talk things over and avert a killer ending for them. But after Joker pulled his hand away, Batman saw a streak of white on his gloves. This wasn't the Joker. Someone had painted themselves white to stand in for him. The Joker was gone. "Do you realize what you've set free?" Batman grabbed the imposter by the throat and demanded to know where the real Joker was. As he intimidated the prisoner, the man screamed in horror. Commissioner Gordon broke in, believing that Batman was brutalizing an inmate. But Batman revealed the truth and once again demanded to know where the Joker had gone. One bad day. On the outskirts of Gotham, the true Joker walked through an abandoned and crumbling amusement park, the home of a former Gotham circus. A real estate agent guided him through and asked if it was what he was looking for. "Well, it's garish, ugly, and derelicts have used it for a toilet. The rides are dilapidated to the point of being lethal, and could easily maim or kill innocent little children." "So you don't like it?" asked the agent. "Don't like it? I'm crazy for it!" And no price was too steep. Money was no problem. Not these days. As Joker walked through the circus, he flashed back to a former life. One where a husband and wife struggled for money. The husband was a struggling stand-up comedian, bitter and defeated. Even the slightest comment from his wife sent him flying into anger. Didn't she believe in him? Did she think he wasn't worried about how they would take care of their soon-to-be-born child? "You think I don't care? That it's all a big joke to me or something?" He began to weep. He had to go up on stage and stand there as nobody laughed. He collapsed into his wife's arms, apologizing for being a failure. Desperate to try to support his wife and unborn child financially, this nobody met up with a couple of thugs looking to score big on a robbery at a playing card factory. The place just happened to be next to the comedian's old job at Ace Chemicals. He knew the place's layout and its low security. The guy was nervous, talking a bit too loudly about the criminal plans. He was nervous about getting caught. The thugs assured him he'd be completely anonymous and showed him his disguise, the costume of the Red Hood. The police and newspapers thought the Red Hood was a single criminal on a crime spree, when in fact, the Red Hood was a rotating group of people who used the same disguise. As the comedian began to get cold feet, the thugs gave him a hard time. Did he want to raise his child in poverty? The comedian gave up. He'd do the job and move his family somewhere nice. Things would never be the same. But before we reveal what happens next, be sure to subscribe to the channel with notifications on to never miss an upload. And smash that like button for some plot armor today. A week later, the comedian met with the gangsters again. As they talked about the robbery in the corner of the bar, a couple of cops came in looking for him. They pulled him aside, and the already nervous would-be criminal started to panic. Were they onto him? Had he screwed up and doomed his family? No. His wife was dead. A freak accident at home. there was no family left to support. Devastated, the man tried to back out of the robbery. There was no point now, no one to take care of. His life had fallen apart, but he was in too deep now. The gangsters warned him. There was no backing out now. Tomorrow, you bury your old lady in luxury. Tonight, you're with us. Get the picture? Was there an accident? Or did the gangsters kill their Patsy's wife so that he would have no reason to back out of the plan and screw up their chances to get rich? Just one more unanswered question in Joker's multiple choice history. The night of the big heist at Ace Chemicals, the gangsters shoved the Red Hood mask over the comedian's head, making it nearly impossible for him to see or hear. Unfortunately, his intel was out of date, and security at the chemical plant had been increased. A security guard aimed a gun and warned the crooks to stop. The gangsters opened fire, with the Red Hood helplessly running without knowing where he was going or what was going on around him. Both of the gangsters were shot dead, leaving Red Hood to flee for his life, half blind and deaf, and completely terrified. As the comedian ran off, Batman arrived on the scene and warned the guards to stop shooting. He was here now, and he would take care of the Red Hood. As Batman lunged at the Red Hood, the petrified comedian cowered in fear at the demonic figure.
"Oh dear God, what have you sent to punish me?"
He shouted before jumping into the polluted river below the chemical plant. After riding the currents downstream, the comedian pulled himself out onto the muddy banks, his skin stinging and itching, burning all over. He tore the hood off of his head and saw his distorted reflection in a puddle. Overwhelmed by the horrific events that had befallen him and realizing his skin and hair had been bleached and disfigured, the comedian began to laugh uncontrollably. At first, only a small snicker, until he exploded into a full-throated, demonic laugh. The Joker was born. Here's to crime. In the present day, Joker had killed the owner of the amusement park, injecting him with his trademark Joker venom that left the man a smiling corpse. With his new base of operations secured, the Joker moved on to the next phase of his plan to prove his point to Batman. There was only the slightest difference between the Joker and any normal man, even the best man, and he would prove it by driving the noblest man Batman knew to complete insanity. As Batman futilely tried to track down the Joker in the heart of the Batcave, Commissioner Gordon was adding to the scrapbook he kept to track all of the Joker's crimes. As his daughter, Barbara, secretly the vigilante Batgirl, brought him a cup of coffee, there was a knock at the door. Barbara opened the door and was met with the haunting image of the Joker, decked out in a new, iconic Hawaiian shirt and camera, ready to take the Gordons on a twisted trip. The Joker's beady eyes flashed in the dark as he pointed a gun at her. Before she could react, the Joker fired, the bullet shooting through her stomach and back, severing her spine. Commissioner Gordon looked on in horror as his daughter crashed into the glass coffee table, clutching her bleeding abdomen. As Joker's thugs beat the commissioner unconscious, Joker readied his camera and began to undress Barbara. As she asked in pain why he was doing this, Joker raised a glass in toast. "To prove a point, here's to crime!" This might be the most horrific and cruel act the Joker has ever committed in his long history. Not just reducing Batgirl, one of comics' most notable female heroes, to a helpless victim, but adding insult to injury by sexualizing that violence. It's a disturbing moment, made worse when Joker uses the photos he took to torment Gordon. Thankfully, future writers managed to turn Barbara's victimization into a unique form of empowerment. She would go on to become the superhero information broker known as Oracle, an important asset to Batman and the Justice League. In doing so, Oracle became one of the most notable examples of representation for people with physical disabilities. It made the best of a bad situation, but it makes the events of this story no less disturbing. Later in the hospital, the doctors explained that Barbara would likely never walk again, as Detective Harvey Bullock laid out the disturbing details. crushing the playing card that had been left with Barbara at the crime scene. Batman demanded a moment alone with Barbara. Once the others had left, Batman whispered to the young woman, "It's me. It's Bruce." Barbara awaked suddenly and shot up, grasping Batman in a frightened embrace. Batman tried to comfort her, but she shut him down. You didn't see his eyes. Joker was taking it to the limit this time. He wanted to prove a point, and the commissioner was on top of the bill. But despite the horrors she had experienced, she knew worse might await her father. What was he going to do to him? She clutched Batman's cape helplessly as the Dark Knight sat in grim silence. Circus of Madness. Back at the amusement park, the Joker was ready to unleash his full carnival of horrors on Commissioner Gordon. He had his minions decked out as grotesque dolls strip Gordon naked and tie him up. They beat him and led him helplessly through the circus, leading him to the Joker, who sat on a throne made of an old carnival ride atop a mountain of lifeless baby dolls. Gordon groaned in pain. "Somebody please tell me what I'm doing here." "Doing?" Joker responded. "You're doing what any sane man in your appalling circumstances would do. You're going mad." As Gordon struggled against his captors, they dragged him to the train of an old haunted house ride and strapped him into the seat. All the while, the Joker taunted Gordon. "When you find yourself locked into an unpleasant train of thought, heading for the places in your past where the screaming is unbearable, remember, there's always madness. Madness is the emergency exit." The train lurched forward into the dark ride, where Joker looked down on him from massive video screens like a demonic apparition. Gordon tried to cover his eyes, but the Joker's minions pried his eyes open and forced him to watch. The Joker suddenly disappeared and was then replaced with dozens of images of his daughter, helplessly bleeding and in pain. Gordon screamed out in horror as the train continued on into new rooms of terror. All the while, Batman tore through the Gotham underworld, demanding low-life thugs and arch-enemies alike tell them where he could find the Joker. But it was all for nothing. He had no leads. Ultimately, it was the Joker himself who revealed his hidden location. Summoned to the Gotham Police Department by the bat signal, Bullock showed Batman the ticket to the Joker's amusement park that had been sent to them. Without a word, Batman rushed into the darkness to confront the clown prince of crime. Back in the amusement park, Gordon's trip through hell came to an end. Joker made fun of Gordon, hunched over and petrified. "That's some ghost train. When they went in, that chap in the middle didn't look a day over 17. Look at him now, poor fellow. That's what a dose of reality does for you. Never touched the stuff myself, you understand. It gets in the way of the hallucinations." Revenge. Joker locked up his shuddering victim in an animal cage as he and his crew of carnival misfits gawked and jeered. "Ladies and gentlemen, you've read about it in the newspapers. Now, shudder as you observe before your very eyes the most rare and tragic of nature's mistakes. I give you the average man. Physically unremarkable, it has instead a deformed set of values. Notice the hideously bloated sense of humanity's importance, the club-footed social conscience and withered optimism. Most repulsive of all are its frail and useless notions of order and sanity." The Joker continued his twisted stand-up act as a pair of headlights grew brighter. How does the average man survive in such a harsh and irrational world? The sad answer, according to the Joker, was not very well. Faced with the inescapable fact that human existence is mad, random, and pointless, 1 in 8 crack and go mad. But who can blame them? In a world as psychotic as this, any other response would be crazy. But Joker's monologue was cut short as the headlights revealed themselves to be the Batmobile. Crashing through the crowd of villains, Batman lunged out of the car, his cape flapping ominously in the pouring rain. Joker and Batman locked eyes as Batman's words from the start of the story rang through his mind. "We're going to kill each other, aren't we?" Batman tackled Joker into the muddy ground, unleashing all his fury on his old enemy. But before he could lay down a full beating, the Joker sprayed Batman's arm with acid, distracting the Dark Knight long enough for the Joker to escape into a hall of mirrors. As Batman tended to his wound, he saw Gordon doubled over and shivering in cold and shock. As Batman comforted his old friend, Gordon came out of his catatonic state. He explained that the Joker had been trying to drive him insane. Batman draped a blanket around the commissioner to keep him warm and offered to stay by his side until the police arrived. But Gordon encouraged Batman to go after the Joker. "I want him brought in, and I want him brought in by the book. We have to show him that our way works." Batman stalked through the carnival of madness as the funhouse mirrors distorted the Joker's chilling grin into hellish, gnashing teeth. As Batman tried to find the path to his insane nemesis, the Joker gloated about his evil plot. As far as he was concerned, whether Batman caught him and sent him back to Arkham Asylum or not, he'd already won. Gordon had been driven mad. He had proved his point. He had demonstrated that there is no difference between himself and everyone else. All it takes is one bad day to reduce the sanest man alive to lunacy. You've had a bad day once, am I right? Joker asked Batman as he clung for dear life above a deadly trap. I know I am. I can tell. You had a bad day and everything changed. Why else would you dress up like a flying rat? That bad day had driven Batman as crazy as anybody else, the Joker believed. But Batman was too stubborn to admit it. You have to keep pretending that life makes sense, that there's some point to all this struggling. Joker tried to guess what that bad day was. Girlfriend killed by the mob. Brother carved up by some mugger. Something like that happened to me, Joker told Batman. I'm not exactly sure what it was. Sometimes I remember one way, sometimes another. If I'm going to have a past, I prefer it to be multiple choice. Joker himself casts doubt on the origin story he recalled throughout the story. He had gone mad enough he couldn't really remember who he used to be. The important thing was that one bad day had driven him crazy. Everything was a joke. All the wars over unimportant things, the threats of nuclear war, all of it was too much to handle. Why struggle when everything anybody ever valued was all just a monstrous, demented gag? Joker just had one more question for Batman. Why aren't you laughing? With his perfectly timed flair for the dramatic, Batman crashed through one of the mirrors just as the twisted clown finally stopped talking for a moment. He grabbed Joker by the collar and threw him through a wall. Batman told the Joker that he was wrong and that he had failed. Gordon was still sane despite everything the Joker had put him through. Batman loomed over a cowering Joker and kicked away his deadly electric joy buzzer. Maybe there wasn't a need to just cower and crawl under a rock when things get hard. Maybe it was just that the Joker was a weak coward all this time, and human nature was more than random nonsense. In an attempt to get away from Batman, Joker pulled down Batman's cowl, temporarily blinding the Dark Knight, giving him an opportunity to smack him over the head with a 2x4 in his most twisted impression of the Three Stooges. As Batman reeled from the sneak attack, Joker pulled a pocket knife and raised it to stab the Bat in his back. The ultimate coward's move to end an opponent. But Batman was through playing games. He grabbed Joker's wrist and punched him in the gut before socking him across the jaw and sending him flying back out into the open air. Batman followed as his old enemy lay unmoving in the mud. As Batman got close, Joker whipped around and pointed a gun at him and fired. But all that came out was a prop flag that said click, click, click. That was it. His last chance. He had lost. Joker readied himself for what would come next. Why don't you kick the hell out of me and get a standing ovation from the public gallery? But Batman had promised to play by the book, and more importantly, he didn't want to. He never wanted to hurt the Joker, but he was running out of alternatives to violence. Maybe it all hinges on tonight. Maybe this is our last chance to sort this bloody mess out. If you don't take it, then we're locked onto a suicide course. Both of us, to the death. Batman didn't want to believe it had to go that way. Perhaps he could help Joker. Maybe they could work together towards rehabilitation. Maybe they had both experienced a similar pain that brought them to where they were. Their story didn't have to end with them killing each other. But for Joker, it was too late for that. As the two arch-enemies came dangerously close to having a genuine moment together, the demented clown couldn't help but be reminded of a joke. See, there were these two guys in a lunatic asylum, and one night they decide they don't like living in an asylum anymore. They decide they're going to escape. So they get up onto the roof, and there, just across this narrow gap, they see the rooftops of the town stretching away in the moonlight, stretching away to freedom. Now, the first guy, he jumps right across with no problem, but his friend didn't dare make the leap. You see, he's afraid of falling. So then, the first guy has an idea. He says, "Hey, I have a flashlight with me. I'll shine it across the gap between the buildings. You can walk across the beam and join me." But the second guy just shakes his head. He says, "What do you think I am, crazy? You'd turn it off when I was halfway across." Batman looked on silently as the Joker cracked himself up and began to laugh uncontrollably until the impossible happened. Batman cracked a smile, and then he began to laugh. There, in the rain and in the dark, as the lights and sirens of the police cars drew closer, the two arch-enemies shared a laugh. Batman leaning on Joker to stay standing up, until the laughter faded, and all that was left was the sound of sirens and the rain splashing against the ground. Now, some read this as a rare and perhaps final, genuine moment between old enemies who realize they are inmates in an asylum, trapped together by their own madness, doomed to a suicide course. Others, though, have interpreted this final page to depict a Batman driven to the edge, strangling and killing the Joker, at least as intended by the creators. The final moment can be read either way, depending on how you want to see it. Perhaps Joker's laughter stops before the sirens simply because the two have run out of breath. Perhaps they are laughing together because they both realize the futility of their battle. But perhaps it was meant to be the last moment the two ever shared. What do you think? Is this Batman's darkest tale? Do you think it was meant to show the last battle between these two legendary enemies? Whatever the case, there's no denying the impact the Killing Joke has had on every Joker and Batman story that has come since. Thank you for watching the video. I've been Anthony Fan. Have an awesome day.